Okay, you guys know that today I'm not giving any medical advice, I'm not making any medical claims, and I'm not making any claims for or against any product or products. Everything today that I'm stating are just opinions of the speaker, and that's it. So today I'm doing this live. I'll release another video, just a basic video, but just in case people had questions, this has been a very big topic, and I think people really want to know the answers to this. Ultimately, the question is, how much hydrogen gas should we typically be inhaling? And I don't mean how much as far as like how long you should be inhaling. Remember, it's based on the equipment that you're using. There's a lot of equipment out there which says, hey, my machine makes 1,000 milliliters per minute or 3,000 milliliters per minute or even 600 milliliters per minute. In my opinion, these are basically ridiculous numbers at this point. The hydrogen thing is just so out of control. I'm going to give you the numbers of what is actually being used medically by medical professionals at major university hospitals in Japan, and the official number that they're using for hydrogen gas inhalation because of the safety and the effectiveness. And by the way, thanks for all the thumbs up. If you guys have any questions, ask now because I'm doing this live to answer. I want to answer questions on this subject because it has been such a confusing thing and it's kind of been going on, I think, for too long. So hopefully this helps clarify some stuff. But the number that they're using in major university hospitals is 130 milliliters per minute. And it's very different, the amount of hydrogen gas that you're going to be using, for example, in a hospital as compared to using equipment. The reason is because in a hospital setting, they actually have tanks of purified hydrogen, molecular hydrogen gas. We're not talking about Brown's gas. We're talking about molecular hydrogen because that's where the research is and that's what was approved and that's what they're using. And they have a tank and they have a flow meter. So basically they can control however much hydrogen gas they want to give you. So they could give you whatever amount at a very high purity, which is very different than having a piece of equipment that has to ramp up the electricity, which is going to cause more damage to things like the metal, to things like the membrane that are in that potential machine. This is why I don't even like super, super high output machines. Everybody thinks it's better, more hydrogen gas. And someone by the name of Red says, when I can afford mine, how much do I take per day? So it's going to really depend. Again, it's not so much the amount that you take per day. Again, based on the equipment. So if you're using the equipment that I use, right, which is the Lourdes Hydrofix, which puts out about 120 or 130 milliliters per minute, I would use that 60 to 90 minutes a day. And again, it depends for what you're trying to use it for. So I would just do, I inhale it whenever I get a chance, but at nighttime, 60 to 90 minutes is a really nice number. Again, the purity of the hydrogen gas that a machine produces is going to be really important, and it is related to the output. After I've studied and learned all about hydrogen production, it's one of the biggest things that I was surprised to find. I thought you could just make more hydrogen. That would be great. I didn't realize that you sacrifice purity with the higher output, and it's not worth the risk. If it was worth the risk, like, oh, it's worth it, get that higher output, who cares about the purity? That's not actually true. The Japanese are basically saying it's better to have the purity at a certain number, and that magic number, again, it's about 130 milliliters per minute. There's no need, because your body will actually get saturated with a lot of this hydrogen anyway. You don't need those crazy high outputs, in my opinion, and that seems to be what the Japanese are also saying. And potentially, if you go too high, it actually can disperse oxygen in your body, so which is not necessarily the best thing you'd want to do either. So, and Barbara says hi. Hi, Barbara. So if you guys have any questions right now, I'm here. I'm going to actually get offline here real soon. I just wanted to answer questions about understanding proper amounts of hydrogen to inhale as far as milliliters per minute. And then, of course, as far as the amount of time, that's a whole other thing. I mean, I inhale as much as I can, like when I sit down to have a dinner or have a smoothie, or I'm just laying down on the sofa, or if I'm watching a YouTube video and I have the machine near me. I'm just always inhaling as much as I really can. But I think 60 to 90 minutes is a good number if you're using the same equipment that I'm using. Other equipment, I have a big caution about that. My protocols are based on the equipment, and I've seen people try to follow my protocols with other equipment. Specifically, the Brown's gas is the worst reactions I've seen. And so that's why I always tell people, please don't follow these protocols if you're using a different type of equipment. I don't want to see anything bad happen to anybody. Red says, how much drinking wine a day? I don't know what that means. I guess you can clarify it again. Not work says, what are the benefits of inhaled versus drinking? So they do have, there's actually a very big list. I'd have to pull it up. The simple fact is, just to kind of put it real simply, is, one, thanks for the thumbs up. I just saw you guys do that. And I'll answer your question in a second, Red. So basically, when you inhale, there's certain benefits, right? When you drink, there's some that are the same as inhalation, but then there's benefits that drinking gives you. For example, like the production of ghrelin, where the inhalation doesn't seem to do that. And then there's things that inhalation does that the drinking doesn't seem to do, specifically like the big ones. I mean, I see it have a positive effect neurologically, like people with dementia and Alzheimer's, but the inhalation is really good because it goes straight to the brain. I know they used inhalation specifically for like heart attacks and strokes in Japan. And I think for the lungs, obviously inhaling is going to be better. But that's why the Hydrofix is so great, because you do the combination of both. And that's actually my protocol, is doing both. And then Red says, how much drinking wise a day? Again, it would depend on pharmaceuticals that you might be on or other medical conditions that you might have. I would say watch my video 337 for a more detailed breakdown. But from the Hydrofix, again, because it's based on the equipment, I mean, I think 2 liters a day, empty stomach before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 30 minutes before meals is a really good amount. Never drink more than 1 liter in 1 hour. And yeah, let's see. Nicole says, my aunt has MAC, disease of the lungs, MAC, usually a macular degeneration, which is probably not what you're talking about as an eye condition. So I don't know exactly what you mean. Let's see. Would you recommend 30 minutes 3 times a day using holy hydrogen? 30 minutes 3 times a day? Yeah, that would be fine. Either, the best time to inhale is actually before going to bed. That's like the best time. But throughout the day, the people who had, there was multiple people, but one that I'm thinking of right now that had a really severe case of macular degeneration, an eye condition. I mean, they were inhaling hours. Like you could sit, because they would sit in front of the computer and work, and you can inhale it for hours and hours and hours a day from the Hydrofix. Super high purity. The amount is really great. That's something that I wouldn't have a issue with. Red says, okay, thanks. And so, yeah, any other questions, guys, on amounts, medical amounts, what the Japanese are actually doing versus what we're being told in America? Because what we're being told in America, again, in my opinion, is, total out of control. They're not giving you the same information that I'm finding in Japan and what the professionals are using. And so I'm trying to go to the source more than what's going on in America right now. They're so far behind on this subject. So if there's no other questions, the biggest thing that I would, again, convey is, remember this. Just because a hydrogen product shows higher amounts of inhalation for gas doesn't mean it's better. You have to turn up the power of the machine in order to make more hydrogen, even if it's an unnecessary amount. In fact, 130 milliliters per minute for the Japanese, and that means at the cannula that you're getting right at the tip of your nose, not what a machine is producing, what you're actually getting. There's a huge difference. And the more you turn up the power, again, the more you damage, again, the metal, the membrane, all these little components in regards to the hydrogen machines. And it appears that you lose purity. That's the biggest thing that I've learned. Not Work says, for someone going through chemo, is more inhale time better? Absolutely. When you're going through chemo, in my opinion, I would definitely do the hydrogen water regularly, but the inhalation, do it as much as you can. If you're just laying there in bed watching TV, inhale, as much as you can. If you're using proper equipment with proper purity, that's what I would personally do. Not Work says, how important is it to buy the expensive cannula from Holy Hydrogen? The thing that I know about this company that they do that's so different than everybody else is, one, I mean, in my opinion, there's a huge scam in the hydrogen world right now. All the companies, and I won't even show you the name on this one, it's kind of hilarious, because all the companies that are selling products, from what I'm seeing, they don't develop their own products. I know people claim they do, but I've found their products literally like on Alibaba and China, and they can put whatever name they want. This one actually has a name on it, which I'm not going to show you, but that's all they do, is they get a product and they put their name on it. They don't actually have teams of engineers. The Holy Hydrogen company is different. They have a team of top hydrogen engineers. That's why they produced what they knew would be the best. They didn't just produce something. They did massive amounts of research. And so when the cannulas that they have are actually produced by Yamaha. And that's because they were measuring the amount of hydrogen that you literally would get at the nose. And so they are the best cannula. One of those cannulas, my understanding, will literally last you a lifetime. That's how well made they are. You can get cheap ones, but cheap ones will not last you a lifetime. And that's fine. You can try a cheap one if you want. You'd probably get a little less hydrogen personally. I think it'd probably be okay. But yes, the company sells like top of the line, lab tested, the best everything they could possibly do. So that's the big difference. I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully it does. Notwork says, any people report getting help with injury from shots? Yes, actually, including, yes, the simple answer is yes. Obviously I won't go into the details, but yes, I have seen that actually a lot, especially people who've had a lot of issues with chronic fatigue. That has been a really big one. In fact, I had certain experiences from just getting the C thing, and I noticed how it greatly affected my energy. But I know other people who, when they literally had a long version of it and they just couldn't get out of it, or it lasted so long, and I could feel that happening to me. And hydrogen definitely got me out of that very quickly. And thank God, because it was exhausting being exhausted. It totally sucked. And thank God for hydrogen. I had some crazy stuff happen to me when I got it. Mine was a wild experience. But the point is, in my opinion, yes, I think it's actually pretty remarkable, and hopefully more information will be coming out about that in the near future. Okay, guys, any other questions about understanding amounts or what the professionals are using, or even why I would have concerns about using machines that have, super high outputs or high output devices, and why my concerns? Any additional questions? If not, I'm going to cut it off here. Notwork says, thank you for all your education you give us. We appreciate you. And you're very welcome. I'm really glad you guys that are finding it helpful. And again, any last questions before I go? Carol Orton says, hi, Greg, glad I noticed you were live. Yes, I haven't been doing this a lot lately, but this is an important subject and it's been coming up a lot. And I think that there is terrible information out there in regards to this. So I felt like I had to do this video. Notwork says, can you inhale too much? So again, if you're using the Hydrofix, so the purity is really the first important part. As far as the amounts, once your body will actually saturate with it, you will literally exhale or off gas any excess amount, especially at 130 milliliters per minute. In my opinion, it would be fine. My only concerns are watching your if you're taking a medicine to, for example, drop your blood pressure to a healthy level, and you're using hydrogen or inhaling a lot, your body may be doing so well that maybe you don't need this medicine, because now the medicine would make it drop too low. And so those would be my big cautions. Watch out, monitor your blood glucose levels, monitor your blood pressure levels, maybe even cholesterol levels, because I've seen all these things come down with hydrogen. So that would be my only concern. Inner Mystic says, any update on the stone people necklace? Oh, this one. I have not located them as of yet. I did find out I have all sorts of stuff that I have not shared with you guys in regards to some very strange things that are happening to me, and they're ramping up. This is a whole other subject. I can tell you that it's almost embarrassing to say this. So I've been getting a lot of premonitions. I think I noticed a pattern between using hydrogen and something that's opening up in the body. I mean, we even know that hydrogen opens up ghost vessels, which is, more blood flow into the body, increasing blood flow in general, not just to certain areas, but just increasing it in general, even to the brain. It's one of the reasons there's literally a healing center in Japan using the Hydrofix for people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and other neurological and brain issues. One of the top experts in the world, who's a Japanese neurosurgeon, only recommends the Hydrofix. He thinks that everything out there is actually pretty bad, and it's not for financial gain. This guy is very wealthy, and I don't even think he gets paid at all, actually. It's just what he personally uses and what he recommends to his patients. And there seems to be a connection between using hydrogen and, I don't want to call it psychic abilities, but there seems to be something. And me personally, even I've been getting premonitions. Like, I don't want to say what I basically, as strange as this is going to be to say, I have very strong intuition about certain things that are going to be happening in the future. I've already called some things. I was even on a show where they thought I was a prophet, which I won't get into that, because of some predictions that I made that did come true. And there's more to come, and they're coming on stronger. And so I just haven't. I don't. That's not what I talk about on my channel, but I guess I don't. That's your update for you on the stone people. But I have not. I have not been in contact with them yet. I'm still going to look for them, but I've been having so much happening in my world as of right now. That's what I'm going for right now. Let's see. Somebody has another question. Nicole says, Do people ever experience feeling sick to their stomach while inhalation? That's really, really rare. I did not personally, but just wondering if you've ever heard of this. The biggest thing that I've heard is this: you have to understand that a lot of people have gut issues. And so, believe it or not, some people will literally say, like, oh, if I eat too many vegetables, my gut doesn't react very well. It's not because vegetables are bad for you, in my personal opinion. It's because you have a problem with your gut. So I have known people, mostly with the water though, more than the inhalation, where people who, and I've only seen this very few times, but it seems to be a pattern of people who have gut issues. So they feel kind of funny in their gut. And then, this is actually a really good example. There's somebody that I'm actually helping right now. So they were using, I don't know if I should name the bottle. I guess it doesn't matter. This person was using a bottle called the Luma Vitae bottle. And it's just one of these bottles. Again, all these bottles, none of them are really that much better than the other as far as what they're making these days. And this person was using this for a long time. They were actually even a promoter of the product, but they were literally getting no benefit. And then they got a Hydrofix. They're like, I'm done with these little cheap products and pills and these little bottles or whatever. And they went all out. And literally from the moment they started using it, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having like bloating in my stomach. And all that hydrogen gas, the way it seems to be affecting them. At the beginning, this person does have gut issues. And they said, I never got any of this with using the hydrogen bottles. So I think that tells you something. In fact, I just talked to somebody else today. Same thing. They have much more of a reaction from the Hydrofix when they had zero reaction from things like the pills or the bottles. And so to me, that really shows that it's reacting in a different way. But I usually see that those are typically pretty short-lived until things start resolving. So it's been a very, very rare thing, but I have seen it here and there in so many years. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, hopefully that does. And I will tell you one thing a little bit about this. This is kind of interesting because the person, Nicole was asking, or not, Intermystic was asking about the crystals. So one thing that they're finding out, even for example, at the pyramids, that the stone has like 70 to 80% quartz crystal within the stones of the pyramid in like the king's chamber. And there is something to it. And am I going to say and claim that I understand all of it? No. But I've been getting more and more premonitions about what it's all about, but I just haven't disclosed any of it yet because this is not the platform for that. But I will tell you that hydrogen it's not just for helping the body, in my personal opinion, repair. Hydrogen can do so many things, and I have so much information that I've never disclosed that someday I will on the proper platform. But there's so much to share, and it's extremely spiritual. And the things that people will begin to experience, because I want you to remember that your body's in a 7-year cycle. And that's one thing I noticed. The more I used hydrogen, the more it began to affect me. Really, especially around the 3-4 year mark, and really has been ramping up even more. So I hit a really big ramp up around the 3 or 4 year mark. And then once I got around, I think it was a 7 year, 8 year, somewhere around there, just very recent, there's been another major ramping up. My dreams, like one of the crazy things is my dreams basically never come true. Like when I have a dream, like let's say I dreamt of owning a pink Cadillac. I've never bought a pink Cadillac, never had a pink Cadillac. My dreams never came true. Recently, they're coming true. Like I had a certain dream, I won't go into the details, and literally the very next day, and I was even thinking to myself, I was driving, and in the dream there was a policeman in a specific spot, and I was going to get stopped and get a ticket or something. And I'm literally going through there, and I'm like, is this policeman really going to be there? Because there's never a policeman there. And I slowed down, and sure enough, there was. And that was just one of many examples that have been happening lately, which is very unusual for me. My dreams don't come true. I'm not one of those people. And that's just one of many examples of things that have been happening lately. It's getting to the point of just, it's crazy, the things that have been coming to me. And I don't want to necessarily open up another channel or anything like that. So at this time, I'm keeping it to myself, but I am open to sharing it potentially on a larger podcast. Like the Next Level Soul podcast is one that I would probably share it on. I would probably share it on something like Rogan. I have some really, really big stuff. And it's so big that it's provable too. It's just that nobody's noticed. It's the craziest thing. I can't believe nobody's noticed. One of them is actually in scripture. I ran it by a Bible scholar just recently, and apparently I blew his mind because he's like, this is crazy. I can't believe I never noticed this. And he knows the scriptures inside and out. So there's some really crazy stuff coming on. And I feel, I don't want to say confident, like I kind of like know something that's going to be coming, and I can describe exactly what's going to happen, but I don't know if it'll matter so much to people, to be quite honest, because once it happens, it's going to happen in nobody will be thinking about whether I called it, but a lot going on lately. I'm very surprised the way that the hydrogen's affecting me. And I think also purifying the body helps a great deal. Atur says, how much should one drink for a maintenance level? Again, if you're doing molecular hydrogen from the same equipment, because I think that really matters, it's all the difference. And I wouldn't even drink certain amounts of water from certain products. But if it's the Hydrofix, I would watch video 337. I feel like that's just going to give you more detail rather than me going over that all over again. Intermestic says, I almost forgot your supplements update. Love when you recommend supplement update. I use almost no supplements. And I am not a fan of most supplements out there because I have learned, and I've had, believe me, guys, I've had so many people contact me who want to they want me to work for them or join them in a business venture and supplements. And there's a lot of money to be made. But I found out that there's a lot of cutting corners, and I've seen too many lab tests on supplements, and I'm just not a fan. Not to mention the fact that there's so much research showing that food is always better than taking some supplement that you're like a vitamin. I want to get my vitamins from my food more than buying some pill. And so I'm not a fan of supplements for the most part. I use almost none at all. And I've been able to achieve really good things, not just for myself, but for other people without virtually any supplements. I think the whole supplement world has gotten totally out of control. And I think that they're like the pharmaceutical industry. It's just trying to sell you some pill or something to make profit. And I'm not a fan. I'm not naming products. I'm not making claims. Those are just my opinions. And if you have more questions about that, I guess you guys can ask. Red says, we're all grateful. Oh, we're all grateful for you. May God bless you. Well, thank you. That's a very nice comment. Northern Yeti says, it's crazy that YouTube isn't boosting your channel. Oh, brother, believe me, I know. Been seeing a lot of terrible info out there lately. I know it's happening, and almost like my channel is almost being suppressed. Unless you do deep research, you're not going to stumble upon my channel, but it is what it is, guys. We'll see. And I think a lot of it has to do with money. People pay to have their channel promoted. All this is done on a shoestring budget so that I can give you all the information for free. I don't want to charge people for it, but some people, I guess, like to. Not Work says, we are so thirsty to hear your information. You are blessing to us all. Well, thank you again. Very nice comments, guys. And but one thing or another, whether I tell you what's coming in the future or not, it's coming one way or another. So does that change anything? I'm not particularly sure. Obviously, I'm not like super worried. I know right now, I will tell you one thing if you guys are curious. There is a Japanese psychic who is very well known. She actually does comic books, and almost like The Simpsons, she predicts the future, and she's been extremely accurate. And her latest prediction is a little worrisome to me. She's saying there's going to be an enormous thing. Something's going to happen in the ocean by Japan. It's going to cause a huge tsunami, something just crazy. And I think she said it's going to happen in like June or July or something. And even China, I find this very odd. The Chinese are telling people, do not visit Japan during this window of time. And they're saying between June and I think September or October or something. And I find that very suspicious and a little odd that they would go that far about saying something like that. Because why would China buy into a Japanese psychic? But this lady seems to be like pretty legit, but I don't know. I don't even follow her much. I just recently read about it and learned a little bit about her. Would that affect the US? Most likely, but it's probably going to hit Japan pretty hard, and that would be a very sad thing. In fact, I don't even know if that would limit. Remember, all the Hydrofixes are made in Japan and everything's going on there. So, who knows? Maybe the supply of those machines won't even be available if something happens. It's hard to say. Not Work says, what is the best platform to hear you besides this channel? YouTube is the best place, but I highly recommend going to my Twitter account, my Instagram account, and Rumble account and subscribing there, because if anything happens to this one, I'm going to have to pivot and do something else. But this to me is the best one right now. It looks like my phone is sliding here. Okay. Any other questions? I guess since everybody's here, thanks for all the thumbs up, everybody, and thanks for all the support. But this was really supposed to be more about hydrogen gas inhalation. So, but yeah. Any last questions? I was mentioning about the crystal quartz in the pyramids. There's a reason for it, and I actually know what it is, but I'm not going to explain it all on this channel. It's too small. This really needs to be on a larger platform, and specifically for that subject. This subject's supposed to be about hydrogen gas inhalation, but it's going to make a big difference, in my opinion, as far as those who use hydrogen and those who don't in the near future. Our bodies are really being put through the ringer, guys. you know, whether they're spraying stuff all over us, stuff in the water, stuff in your food. Like we are really being bombarded, and hydrogen is the most protective thing that I've ever seen. And I think our bodies need all the protection that we possibly can receive. So, somebody said, do you use distilled water with your hydrogen machine? Yes, you might want to watch my video 388, but carbon distilled water is basically some of the cleanest water you can possibly get, better than any water filter out there. And more importantly, it eliminates, well, I have the lab test right here actually. So it's really, really amazing. The things that it removes better than any water filter. And carbon distillation also removes mold, viruses, bacteria, and parasites, which other water filtration systems will not do at the level that carbon distilled will do. So yes, and it keeps the machine even cleaner and gets the pharmaceuticals out, including the fluoride and all that garbage. So just really important. I mean, that's why I do it. You guys can go to mypurewater.com. If you want a discount code, you can use the code uprising 144K. They're really affordable, and you get like really clean water. And there's so much you can do with carbon distilled water, not just for your hydrogen machine, but it keeps the machine really clean and way less maintenance. And it's been really quite a blessing. I love having that water. Intermystic says, oh no, that's a tour says, do you inhale on a regular basis or only when ill? Oh, I do it on a regular basis. I keep my hydrogen levels up. Preventative is always key. You can do it when you're sick only, but I do it on a regular. Now, what made it easier for me is having two machines. That actually changed everything for me, because now I have one set up only for inhalation right where I eat. And then I have another one for the water that I typically have in my room. So, okay, let's see. Not work says, do we need to put trace minerals back into the water after we make the H2 water? You can use some minerals in your water. If you do carbon distilled, you're obviously removing all these minerals. But remember, there is a difference between organic and inorganic minerals, guys. And I like to get my minerals actually primarily from my food more than my water. And one of the techniques that I use, if you've ever seen how I make my smoothies, is I actually put the minerals in with the smoothie, because I know that the fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, everything that I use are mineral deficient. And I found research, and I'd already been doing this for years, by the way. And I found research where somebody copied my protocol and did a scientific study. They literally took smoothies like the ones that I make, and they were putting minerals in it, and people's bones were rebuilding. And I kind of had a hunch about this based on some Japanese data too. Fiber gets lodged in little microscopic holes throughout your GI system, and it's like a time release of these minerals that get caught up with the fiber, so your body can actually absorb them real well. So I'm having like crazy nutrient absorption, crazy mineral absorption. It has taken things to such a crazy level that I've shared before in my blood work. Doctors can't even believe it. Part of it is even literally, in my opinion, I've gotten my body to produce its own nutrients. There's nothing better than your body producing its own nutrients. That is amazing. It's almost like coming from God. You know, your body, what God created, is producing these nutrients. And that's why the doctor that looked at my blood work's like, this doesn't make any sense. How do you have such nutritional levels with the way you eat? And I don't like to talk about diet because everybody argues about it, but they just couldn't understand it, because the doctor said that should technically be impossible. And then I found data now that's showing that if you treat your gut, a lot of what I've been doing, my secret techniques, you actually can potentially get your body to start producing its own vitamins, guys. It's bonkers. And I'm finding some scientific data. It really looks like I'm producing between 33 and 40% of a lot of my own vitamins. So bonkers, absolutely nuts. I never expected that in a million years. Okay, so let's see here. But you can put a little bit of minerals in your water. That's cool. Ski Coacher says, is there a safe way to naturally unclog your arteries? Absolutely. Now, I'm not going to go into, I don't know if I should be sharing this, because to be honest, when it comes to something like that, it kind of really requires what I would call a consult, because I need to know a lot about what medical issues you might have, what pharmaceuticals you might be on, limitations as far as water, if you have kidney issues. Like, there's so many things. But yes, unclogging arteries, to be honest, this is a funny thing, it's actually easy. That's one of the easy ones. There's things that are really hard, and there's things that are really easy, and then there's some things that are borderline probably impossible. Like if you have a deformity or super bad scoliosis, I don't think hydrogen's going to really transform your body and remove your imperfections, or whatever might be going on. But clogged arteries, that's an easy one, which is crazy, because doctors want to like literally go in there and put stents and do all these crazy things. That's an easy one. I've actually seen scans before and after scans with some of my protocols where you literally get rid of the blockages. So I've actually seen those. So, okay, let's see. I think that's the last of the questions. If you have anything else, this is a good time. Otherwise, again, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for all the thumbs up again, guys. That's, appreciate that. Ski Coacher says, thank you. And if you really want to do the full consult, which I'm very hesitant to do that with most people these days, but if you really, really want one, you can email me and we'll kind of talk about it. I'll give you a personal phone call. You can include your phone number. And my email is uprising144k@gmail.com. And remember, only if you're really, really willing to put in the effort. Because I don't like to put effort and help somebody if they're not going to put in the effort. And I've done that in the past and I will not do that anymore. Because most of my time goes into taking care of myself. And obviously, you guys probably all know taking care of yourself requires time. And I just don't want to interfere by trying to help people who don't end up actually doing anything. They follow a protocol for a week or something, and then they just fall off. So I like to work with people who are very dedicated and willing to put in the effort. Then I'm willing to also help. And then we can prove it to everybody. I've done a lot of testimonial videos and we can show the blockages. I should probably have, it'd be really good to have before and after scans and really show everybody that the techniques work. Because again, they're actually really easy. It's not a complicated thing. The reason that they're even getting clogged up are for reasons that most people don't understand, including doctors. They just don't seem to get it, but I figured it out and it's pretty simple. Peace, laughter, and gratitude says, thanks again, bro. God bless you. Well, thank you guys. Also, okay, again, any last questions? Otherwise, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following the channel. Thanks for all the thumbs up, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And I don't see any questions. So with that being said, guys, I'll see you guys next time. Oh, wait, we do have a final question here. Mio Bello says, hi, Greg. I have been using the Lourdes since March. I am off all meds. Now, isn't that incredible? Look at that, guys. That's so great, Mio. I'm so happy for you. And I've heard a lot of those. And it's so important to get off the medications because I think we all know the potential side effects or how they don't tend to be pretty good for us. Atur says, thank you. Notwork says, for ulcerative colitis, is irritating king the H2 water more important than inhaling? I'm not sure I totally understand your question, but if I was to I guess yes, based a little bit on what you're saying, for ulcerative colitis, what would be better? In my opinion, hydrogen water more than inhalation. For the GI system, it's the water. You want super clean water though. That's why you want the carbon distilled, because there's too many things. I mean, look, if I start reading off the stuff that is on the list, and I got pages of all the chemicals and everything, you probably can't see very well, of what's in the water that cause a lot of GI issues and health issues, in my opinion. So you want to get that really clean water and then do those hydrogen water protocols. And if you can put inhalation in there, and I don't know why you wouldn't do it. If you have a Hydrofix, I mean, it does inhalation. I don't see why you wouldn't do it, but okay, unless you want to make a comment. Lori says, what do you think about beam minerals? I don't know what your beam minerals are, but the simple fact is I like the ones from a company called Concentrace. They remove almost all the salt and keep the minerals. I know a lot of people keep arguing that salt is good for you. There is absolutely 100% clear evidence in Japan that they've done on salt, because the Japanese are high consumers of salt. Like their soy sauce is very salty and they have a lot of fermented foods and a lot of salt in their food. And there's clear evidence for higher risks for the strokes and hardening of arteries and heart attacks. What you really want is not the salt. You want the minerals. And you really want organic minerals if possible. So I like the Concentrace product where they remove the majority of the salt, like over 99%, but they keep the minerals. And so I'm more of a fan of that product. I don't know what B minerals are. I don't know if it's a brand or whatever. And I've tried many different brands. And I just like the Concentrace one. That's my own personal opinion. But Japanese, I know there's a lot of really good mineral products in Japan also. So I don't really know about that one. Atur says, what is the difference between the 30-minute setting or the 90? Well, again, it's all about how long you're going to be inhaling. So if you're going to inhale for 30, the machine will run at 30 and give you a certain amount. After that, the amount drops off. If you go to 90, you'll run at the higher amount for the 90 minutes. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's pretty simple. Mio Bello or Bello says, just need my leg inflammation to finally flush out. Yep, just, typically, I would only guess, I'm just guessing because I don't know your whole history, but maybe kidneys. And for people with kidneys, I changed the protocols too because they can only handle so much water. And for people with kidney issues, super clean water is imperative because any contaminant in the water is only going to strain those kidneys more and keep them from being able to repair. And of course, you want to make sure to overcome nutritional deficiencies because you want your body to have everything it needs to repair on its own. That's really what it's all about. Okay, Not Work says, is drinking more important? Thank you. Yeah, as I stated, um, if you had to choose one, I typically would choose the hydrogen water, hands down. And mostly because that's what nature does, the hydrogen water in nature. But yeah, I've seen the hydrogen water do more amazing things than the inhalation, actually. So I would go with the water. Lori says, thank you. A tour says, what about 30 versus 90 for drinking? Okay, so for drinking, it doesn't actually make that much of a difference. For drinking, 30 minutes will fully saturate 1.5 liters with the Hydrofix. If you notice there's a line towards the bottom of the pitcher that's half a liter, it'll fully saturate that water in 10 minutes. So it's all about how much time it needs to saturate the water. So after 30 minutes, that's it. You've reached the limit of what's going to be saturated in that water. You don't need the 90 minutes. Makes no difference. This is why it's good that they do all the science. They study everything in Japan as far as equipment, which the truth is nobody else really does. I mean, they can claim they do, it's fine. I'm not making any claims, but there is no company out there that lab tests every single machine they make. The Japanese are the only ones. In fact, the Holy Hydrogen Company is the only company that does that. Nobody else lab tests every machine. And they're not even using the right equipment in America, in my opinion. They use bubble tests, which is, in my opinion, just really silly because you don't know what's contained in the bubbles. I could stick my mouth in water and start blowing bubbles. You look at a fish tank, and purity is really important. I've seen too many lab tests that are causing me concern. Thanks again for the thumbs up. I just saw you guys gave me a bunch there. Okay, peace, laughter, and gratitude. I love the name. Says, is there any books you recommend? On what? What subject? I don't know exactly what subject you're talking about. Most of the books that I would recommend, I don't think most people would understand the things that are written in the books. So it'd be, dare I say, a little bit of a waste of time. But again, I don't know if you're talking about like health, if you're talking about on a spiritual front. I don't really know. I guess you could elaborate if you want, but otherwise I'll say goodbye here very soon. You guys are here and you're asking questions, so I'll stick around here for a little longer if you guys have them, but otherwise I'll be headed out here very soon. Okay, any books? I mean, the only book that I don't know how much interest, but I find these particular interesting. And by the way, we were talking about water and the safety and purity. I will tell you one thing. Who do you think water affects the most as far as impurities? And look at some of the stuff that's in water, guys, if you can see this. So these four things, I'll read them to you. Basically, inorganic contaminants, which is like lead, mercury, arsenic, stuff like that. Radioactive contaminants, that was shocking to me when I was researching water. I didn't know we had radioactive stuff. Biological contaminants, so obviously that's like living organisms, parasites, bacteria, stuff like that. And then even organic contaminants like herbicides, pesticides, gasoline, and all these type of things. And who do they affect the most? Well, babies, children. And we see a huge rate of issues with autism, especially in California. And I'll tell you one thing in California water, there's a lot of problems with California water. Very high levels of PFAS, guys. What's called a forever chemical. And interestingly enough, that is on this lab test. In fact, you can see it right here. PFOAs or PFAS, different ones. And here's the levels before, and this is after carbon distillation. It's all zeros because it removes it all. I'm telling you, who cares about the pH of your water? Who cares about that it's from some special spring or well and everything that everybody thinks about? The water is very contaminated water, guys, these days. In my opinion, you want to carbon distill it. And once it is, just look at all these zeros. It's what I do. And I only share with you guys what I do and what my opinion is the best. Okay, so somebody says, peace, laughter, and gratitude. Books are, on fasting and spirituality. Well, on fasting, I don't have any. I really like this book, The Hidden Messages in Water. Of course, a Japanese guy who figured it out, that water really appears to have memory, reacts to thoughts, music, words, intentions. It's crazy. So this book is a really beautiful book. I really like that book if you enjoy reading. On a spiritual front, I just don't think most people would understand the important parts of this book, but it's the Essene Gospel of Peace. I was not even a fan of this book. You guys have probably heard me a million times say it, but the reason I became a fan of this book was because of literally the last 4 pages in this particular book. It's a story that nobody on the planet's talking about. There's not one person out there I've ever heard say it. As you guys probably know, I have been, it's embarrassing again to talk about because I just don't like to talk about this too much because I don't like foo-foo stuff. I'm a data guy, but I have been to the other side, near-death experiences and this type of stuff. And I've had some really terrible things that I've been through and that I've even put myself through. But on the other side, the things that I experienced and the things that I saw are not, I never heard anybody say anything like it. So most people will say things like, oh, I saw Buddha in hell, or I met Jesus, or a lot of people say stuff like that. But my experience was so different that I felt kind of alone in it. And I didn't want to go and say anything. And I never saw it anywhere. So it kind of made me feel weird. I'm like, why did I see certain things that nobody else saw until I read this book? Because the last 4 pages. So in this book, it's all about Jesus actually. So Jesus is going around, talking to people and showing them how to heal. And he talks even about food and nature and really beautiful things, actually, a lot of methods that I've incorporated into my protocols. But then he gets to this point where he talks about the other side. And he basically says that there's things that you just won't understand, can't understand. He can't even explain it to you, that he'd have to teach you how to go there so you can experience it for yourself. And what he describes on the other side so beautifully and poetically is exactly what I experienced and what I saw. And that's the reason that I actually trusted this book more than ordinarily I would. From a very logical perspective, I would have read this book and be like, this is a bunch of mumbo jumbo, or maybe there's a little bit of truth to it, but probably not much, because these supposedly came out of the hidden archives of the Vatican. He never did it for money. In fact, if you look closely, it's $1. He only wanted enough money to print more books. He wanted the information to get out there. It wasn't about money. And yeah, this impressed me a great deal, because after I read that, I no longer felt alone in regards to the things that I saw, the things that I experienced, and they changed my life, completely changed my life, and the things that I do in my life and the direction that I live and all this stuff. But yeah, this is, in my opinion, a very remarkable book. So, and Peace, Laughter, and Gratitude says, I love the Essenes. Thanks. Yeah, they call them the children of light. In fact, the 144,000, remember my channel is called Uprising of 144K, which is the 144,000. And they were all dressed in white robes, which actually is symbolic. There's a lot of things that are symbolic, and it's symbolic of light, so that's the whole reason. And then the book is called The Essene Gospel of Peace. And there's actually a secret here. I'll share this one. I don't share a lot of this stuff, but just remember, even in the Bible, Jesus never went around saying, hey, God be with you, and also with you, and God be with you. He actually never really went around telling people for God to be with them. What he actually said, and this is really important, I know that most people don't understand, and I don't normally want to talk about it, but I'm going to share it with a few people who are hanging out here. He always said, peace be with you. And the reason he said peace be with you and not God be with you, and then notice, and if you want to know why he did that, I'll explain it. But then notice the title, The Essene Gospel of Peace. Peace is that key word, guys. And so, again, if you want me to explain the meaning and why Jesus would say that instead of, God be with you and stuff, I can explain it. Otherwise, I'll let it go. No problem. I don't need to talk about it. But yeah, I don't share a lot of the spiritual stuff. But anyway, yeah, this is, in my opinion, a really great, beautiful book. In fact, some of the imagery is really shocking to me because I experienced a lot of this. In fact, this one, I'm like, who the heck drew this? Because I saw something extremely similar. In fact, I was standing like this on a cloud and there was a spirit with me, and see how they even have a little ring around of light? The being with me was made of light. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen and experienced and felt. And then there's a few other pictures here that are kind of wild that I'm just like, who drew this stuff? This is another one. And you can see again the person with them, because there was somebody accompanying me, and they had the light on them, and they were not just accompanying me, they were taking me places. So I was there. I was navigating the stars in the universe, and I couldn't have done it without the help of this being with me because I didn't know my way around. You totally lost. This thing knew everything. I was like a tour guide, but I don't want to say that. It sounds weird. But it was very similar actually to the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Egyptian Book of the Dead was extremely accurate in a lot of things that I saw and experienced. That and the Tibetan Book of the Dead also were actually the most closely, depicting, in my opinion, the whole journey that I went through and the Seeing Gospels. Okay, let's see. Lori says, yes, please do. I don't know. Let's see. Carol says, will hydrogen water pull out heavy metals? This question may have already been asked and answered earlier, but I came on the live chat late. In my personal opinion, yes. There's two things and that is actually a very big caution of mine. I could explain the whole thing here, and I think it's important, but the simple fact is clean hydrogen water. You want clean water to pull out the heavy metals, in my opinion, and high fiber diet, because fiber is constantly helping pull these things out of your body. It's like a broom too, sweeping out your colon, helping absorb minerals and nutrients better, feeding the good gut bacteria. It's just super important. Fiber is, I've been preaching that for a long time. Not Work says, do you think using the Hydrofix with clean water will help open us to spiritual understanding? To a certain extent, yes. In my opinion, yes. The way that it affects the body. I mean, I think hydrogen is actually the most spiritual thing in existence. In fact, just look at the sun and the stars. To me, the stars are God's handwriting or calendar, and they're all made of hydrogen, obviously. When the Bible says, "Let there be light," where do you think happened? It was the stars bursting into light. Even people talk about the Trinity. I think that the Trinity is very confusing to a lot of people, because to me the real Trinity is, and Jesus spoke about it, by the way, but everybody missed it. He mentioned it in one of my favorite verses in Scripture when he spoke to Nicodemus. And Nicodemus asked him about, he said, like, we know you are a man of God, for no man could do such things if God were not with him. And he's basically saying, so what's the truth? What's the answer? And ironically, Jesus does not say, just go give 10% to the church and accept me as your Lord and Savior, and we're good here. You go to heaven. But he didn't actually say that. What Jesus actually said is, you must be born again. And going into more detail, he basically said water and spirit. And he talked about flesh and spirit. And basically what he meant, if you really go down to the original scriptures, is wind. Wind and spirit are the same thing. In fact, even at the very end of that particular verse, he said, the spirit is like the wind. You don't know where it comes from or where it goes. So are those who are born of the spirit. He said something along those lines. And the simple fact is, the real Trinity is water, wind, and the sun, because those are the things that are required for life on planet Earth. And life is the closest that you get to God. And hydrogen brings, in my opinion, so much life to the body. And that's why it really begins to transform things. But there's a cycle. That's why the longer you use it, the better. And if you're going to use it for a long time, you want high purity. You don't want things that are not pure when it comes to hydrogen. Same thing with your air, same thing with your food, all that stuff. Okay, moving on. Ator says, what is the water book title, please? It's The Hidden Messages in Water. So the hidden messages in water. Red says, what kind of water do we use? You mean me? Or do we or me? I don't know which one, but I use carbon distilled water from a website called mypurewater.com. Again, discount code if you want a coupon is uprising144K. And that is the cleanest way to clean your water. And then I use that in the Hydrofix, which makes the cleanest and best hydrogen. So that's what I like to do, high purity. Richie says the Essene Gospel of Peace. That is correct, Richie. And then Richie says, one day I'll state reading the pile of books I bought. Note adding another one. Yeah, it's, again, I don't know how many people will totally understand parts of it. Some of them are just not realistic. Like, in the book, Jesus tells you to cook food using the power of the sun. Well, who's going to cook their food outside using the sun? And what if you don't have enough sunlight? So that's tricky. But I love what the Japanese do. They're using hot springs to cook a lot of their food. And beautiful, so beautiful. I totally love it. And I have videos of me doing it. So I've obviously done it, and it's amazing. The taste and Mother Nature. And I love things, you know, when things come from the earth, they just feel more natural and they feel better. I like to do everything as natural as possible. I don't believe in the whole synthetic world. Once in a while, there's a few things I'm a fan of that I'll use for like antiparasitics and stuff very temporarily, but not forever. Red says, thank you so much. And okay, I think I answered all your questions, unless if I didn't say something now, again, I'll forever hold your peace, right? No, I'll be leaving here soon. Oh, this is interesting. I missed that, I guess. Somebody said, please explain it. I have that poster in my room. I don't know what poster of them looking up at the angels. Oh, okay, the pictures. Interesting. Okay. I think I answered all your questions. Okay, guys. So thanks again for all the thumbs up. I'll give you a second for any last questions. Otherwise, I will be saying goodbye. I really hope you guys found this helpful. And yeah, and you know, I will say that I think that there is a correlation and a connection between spirituality and health. And if anything, what do you see in a lot of the spiritual stories, including the Jesus stories? You know, he helps people heal. And in this book, it's interesting because the Jesus in this book, he does go around helping people heal, but he doesn't do it just by touching them. He educates them on life and how to eat and how to live and using the power of nature and some really pretty beautiful stuff. So very different stories, really. This one, I don't know. I mean, who knows which real Jesus's stories are real, but these are totally different than the Bible. But there are a few in here. I don't know if I could pull it up right now. I thought it was beautiful. In fact, maybe I'll read it to you if I find it. But basically, if you guys ever remember the Lord's Prayer, the Lord's Prayer wasn't complete according to this book. And they have the completed version in here because remember that it starts with Our Father that art in heaven. But what we didn't notice, well, at least in this book, it says there's a whole other part that says Our Mother. And that makes a lot of sense actually, because so it has Our Father and then Our Mother. And it goes into this whole prayer, and the mother is the earth. But remember, when it says that we were created of the earth also. And we do have a, you know, Jesus talks about it too, where you have the flesh and you have the spirit, and they're both honestly pretty different. One lives forever, one clearly doesn't. And one has a ton of wisdom and one clearly doesn't. And so there's just a beautiful, beautiful prayer in here, but I guess I can't find it in here right now, but I really like that. The complete prayer. There's a lot of prayers in that book that are in the Bible, but the Bible doesn't have the whole version, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they would cut out certain things. Okay, Red says, thank you so much. Notwork says, what is a good way to increase fiber when traveling and can't make smoothies? You got to get creative, Notwork. I mean, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to probably buy produce. I mean, look, if you're out for traveling for a week and you don't have huge amounts of fiber, that's okay. Once you get back home, you can go back to making your smoothies. If you're leaving your situation, which I have before too, you prep the body by, I'm always using my hydrogen. I'm always eating healthy. I'm always doing all these things. And when I go traveling, I relax on it a bit. And I don't do all the hydrogen that I normally would do or whatever. And I just take a break from it. As long as it's not going to go for more than like a month. If it's 1 or 2 weeks, I'm typically good. Anything over a month, I need to figure it out. Richie says, trespasses or debtors? I don't know. Oh, you're talking about the prayer? Forgive us for our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, Richard. I don't know what your question is, but clarify it if you want me to try to give you at least my opinion. Mio Bello says, do you have any opinion on Key Coli or Pyramid or PEMF? I personally think it's nonsense. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is nonsense, not necessary. I'm actually concerned with a lot of products out there that they claim to be good for you that actually is the opposite, that they're not good for you. I keep it really, really simple. Clean water, clean hydrogen. If you can have a really good air filter in your house for clean air, that's really important. Clean food, and make sure to get your nutrients as much as possible, mostly from your food. The only thing I really supplement is my vitamin D. And of course, I take vitamin D with K2 in its ionic form. That's like literally the only thing, because you're just not going to get enough vitamin D from your food. Sorry, guys, it's just not going to happen. I mean, you could wish that all you want, but it's just not going to happen. So I need to make sure to get my nutrients that way. Sam says, what are your thoughts on raw or cooked vegan foods? I think it's mostly okay. I mean, there's certain foods that you definitely don't want to eat raw, and you definitely want to cook. I do not like cooking. I do no cooking with oil. No stir fried, no deep fried, no pan fried. No cooking with oil. Everything is steamed, boiled, fermented, or raw, depending on the food. And then I put my different toppings on it, as you guys have probably seen in some of my videos. So I don't know if that answers your question, but James Pond says, we got James Bond in the room. Do you recommend any probiotic supplements? Not a ton, but if I was going to use anything, I should probably give you this person's info. Go look for, I don't know what, gosh. Email me directly if you want me to give you somebody's info who works for a company that actually uses Japanese enzymes, and they literally and probiotics, and they're literally the best in the whole United States. I know they use like pharmaceutical grade, really, really good stuff, super high purity, and they're actually getting their stuff from Japan, and really good. So if you want to know more about that, just send me an email and I'll send you this person who's in charge of all that stuff. Yeah. Richie says, yes, the Mandela effect. You mean the Mandala effect? Okay. I don't know exactly. I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know what your point is. But peace back to you. Okay, guys. Any last questions or anything before I get going? Okay, I don't really see any last questions. I hope you guys found this helpful. Thanks for supporting the channel. I'm going to give you a few seconds though, because I know that somebody always ends up having a question. Man, I'll tell you, the stuff in our water though is absolutely bonkers. But I think this is so important. Look at this. See how everything, this is the levels in the water, and this is after carbon distillation. Look at that. Just removes everything. It's really, really good. That's what I personally use. And the good news is that it's not expensive. Some of this stuff is really expensive, and carbon distillation isn't. So Richie says, ciao. All right, guys. I think that is about it. I'll see you guys next time on the next one. If I can figure out how to turn this off, I never know how to do this. Not a techie guy.